Hello, everybody. It's just about that time. Time for another NEC women's basketball season. I'm Ralph Ventre, here alongside Craig D'Amico, and this guy here, nobody knows more about NEC women's hoops than him. He loves it. He lives it. He's back for the 2016-17 season. You'll see him on our ESPN 3 package. You'll see him on Front Row. Today, you're going to see him lay out his predictions for the year to come. Craig D'Amico, a.k.a. NEC Nostradamus. Craig, let's start right at the top. We're getting right into business, diving in. 3 storylines. We'll go one by one. 3 stories that are on your mind heading into the 31st season of Northeast Conference women's basketball.
Ralph, always excited to be back for a new season of NEC Hoops. You look at the 2016-2017 season for NEC women's basketball, there's no shortage of storylines, but I'll try to limit it to just 3. We start first with the surprise teams, because there's always every year teams that come from out of the radar that you don't expect, especially the last couple years. In 2015, there was Central Connecticut, picked 9th in the preseason. They ended up winning the regular season. St. Francis Brooklyn, they were seeded 5th in the tournament. They ended up cutting down the nets. Last year, Sacred Heart were picked 5th in the preseason. They won the regular season. And then St. Francis, the Red Flash, they were picked 8th and they finished in the top 4. So there's always teams that kind of come out of the radar, and we'll look at maybe some of those surprise teams a little later on. But who are those teams that maybe we're not expecting right now that come up and surprise us? That's always a fun storyline to watch.
So basically, who is going to defy those preseason rankings from the bottom half into the top half? You're going to be looking for that team. Obviously, we'll find out down the road. Give me storyline number 2 here, Craig. What else is on your mind?
Well, we're looking at the surprise teams, but also let's look at the top of the bracket here. You have Robert Morris, the reigning champions in the Northeast Conference. They're back and just about better than ever here in 2016-2017. They bring back a good core of their returning players. Yes, they lost their starting point guard in Ravelli. Yes, they lost Natalie and a couple of other good supporting players. But the core of that team is back, led by Ananiki Stamalampru. And this is a team that's looking for their 4th straight trip to the title game, their 3rd title in the last 4 years. And they always have a bullseye on their back. This year is going to be no different. But can they win their 3rd championship in 4 years? We know 2014 it was win for Artie. Last year it was win for Sal. This year perhaps it's win for Ananiki and for their new coach, Coach B. You look at the history of NEC women's basketball. There's very few players who have won 3 titles, 3 rings in their 4-year career. A lot have won 2. But players who win 3 rings, you're talking Mount St. Mary's early 90s, the Red Flash late 90s, early 2000s. Ananiki and this senior class of Robert Morris have a chance to go out champions and get to some rare air in the Northeast Conference. 3 rings in 4 years, that would be big.
Now, you mentioned key players are back for Robert Morris from that championship team that went and took on UConn in the NCAA. Megan Smith, nice presence down in the post. She can play outside as well, a versatile forward. And then
Rebecca Navarro, average 7 points, about 3 rebounds. Jocelyn Jones.
A threat from long distance, Rebecca Navarro, Jocelyn Jones.
And Janae Brown is going to be taking over that point guard position. So her running the show in the backcourt with Ananiki, that could be fun to watch.
But there is one change there, and you mentioned it briefly. There's a new man at the head of the Robert Morris bench.
You're right, but it's a change, but not really a big change, because Coach B, Charlie Buscaglia, the son of Sal Buscaglia, has been there for the last 13 years on the bench of his dad, and now he's taking over as the head coach. And it's funny because not many people might realize this, but Sal has allowed Charlie to go in and do some game planning, implement some drills in practice, do some of the routines. So him stepping in is really not that much different from what they've been doing over the years that's led to championships. And yes, he's made some subtle changes. He's his own person, so he's going to do his own thing in a couple spots, but they're subtle changes. And so the routine of Robert Morris isn't going to differ that much from what they've been doing very successfully, I might add, over the last couple of years.
So although there's a change, there'll definitely be some continuity with the Colonials. So you're talking surprise team, you're talking Robert Morris. How will they return off their championship season with a new head coach. And now, give me number 3. What else?
Well, what I'm really looking for, I look at Wagner and Heather Jacobs, the other new coach that we have in the Northeast Conference. And, she's coming in, and yes, she has a big task in front of her to try and rebuild this Wagner program.
But she's done it before,
But
Craig.
she has done it before.
In
D3, she's done it. In D2, she's done it. Turning around programs and turning them within a year or two into contenders. And so this year, she's going to maybe set the foundation. She has a good crowd of players, lost lost a lot. You're talking the leading scorer in the Northeast Conference and in the nation, but and also Roma, a big rebounder, they lost her too, so that's going to hurt. But setting the foundation this year and building for the success that's to come, maybe within the next couple of years, I think this Wagner team establishing a new culture under Coach Jacobs is going to be interesting and fun to watch.
You got Craig's storylines. Now, I want to know about your list of potential prime performers. 5 players, 10 players. You know what? Let's go 1 per team. The potential prime performer. We'll start at the top alphabetically. Bryant Bulldogs. Who's that top performer?
I'm looking at Alex Klein. She really had a great finish to the season last year. Her last couple games of the regular season, and then especially in the NEC tournament, she was dynamite. She was on the all-tournament team last year. She really broke out, and if she could carry that momentum into 2016, 2017, that could really help offset the loss of Brianna Rucker and keep Bryant as one of the top contenders in the Northeast Conference.
All right, Central Connecticut, Blue Devils, Burl Piper.
They lost a lot. Camden Musgrave leaving, TJ Malone leaving as well. So ALEAH EPPS running the show in the point and in the backcourt. I think she's going to need to step up this year. She finished just shy of double figures last year. If she can get into double-digit scoring, I think that'll help Central. Interesting note about Central, they've gone back and forth under Burl Piper. In even years, their winning percentage is .378. In odd years, they're .653. Good news, 2017 is an odd year. I think this could be one of the surprise years for Central Connecticut State.
All right. Fairleigh Dickinson. Now, they lost an all-time great in Erica Livermore, graduated. Kelsey Cruz was also a nice scorer for the Knights. Who's the potential prime performer who's going to step up for head coach Pete Sinella in Hackensack?
They have Brianna Thomas. They have Kiana Brown, 2 big seniors. I look at Maddie Comley. She was a freshman last year, was on the all-rookie team. She had a really solid start. If she could build on that in her sophomore season, I think that's going to be great. Not easy losing over half of your offense, as you mentioned, with Livermore and even Kelsey Cruz, but I think they have a good foundation. They want to push the tempo a little bit maybe than they did in years past under Coach Sinella now in his 10th season. So I think we could see some of the youth start to rise to the top in Teaneck and in Hackensack.
LIU Brooklyn, Stephanie Oliver took the reins a couple years ago. She's leading a revival of sorts. Who's going to be her prime performer?
I don't think this is really that much of a surprise. Shinovia Dove is a shooter. She loves to shoot. She loves to score. She almost doubled her output from her sophomore year to her junior season last year. She took over 100 more shots last year than she did the year before. So taking that next step this year in her senior year, I think she might be one of the top leading scorers in the Northeast Conference this season.
All right. Let's take a little trip down to Emmitsburg, Mount St. Mary's, one of the more storied NEC programs, a tremendous history at the Mount. They always seem to be in the mix for a postseason berth. Which player on Brian Witten's roster are you most excited about?
Well, they have to replace their point guard in Chicky. They have to replace Arthur Williams, who has a presence down low. But I think if you're going to replace some of that, you have to look no further than Alexis Carter. Again, senior, averaged about 13 points per game last year. She does a lot on the boards as well, about 7 rebounds. So if she could come in and offsets the losses that they've had, both in the rebounding game and in the scoring game, I think Mount can maybe be one of those teams that exceed expectations this season.
All right, we keep moving on down the alphabet. Moon Township, Robert Morris. We talked about them at the top of the show. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a challenge here because I'm going to ask you for your potential prime performer, not Anna Nikki Stamalampru. You cannot, Anna Nikki, we know she's already lived up to that potential. She's been a prime performer. So give me someone else on that in that Colonials rotation who you think may be on the all-conference team come March?
Well, you mentioned her earlier on, Megan Smith. She's a fun player to watch. She can score, she can rebound, she can block. I mean, she can almost do it all. She's an all-around player, which really fits in their system. They're a system that, it's not really about an individual player. It's more about the entire team. So she fits perfectly in the system, and I think, this year she can really have maybe a breakout year that leads to maybe a second team or a first team all-conference thought or selection.
Now, Sacred Heart, reigning regular season champion. Of course, the NEC preseason favorite this year. They were tab number 1. Robert Morris, number 2. Sacred Heart, reigning player of the year, Hannah Kimmel.
Can't pick her, right?
No, she's off the board. Pioneers, who you got?
Well, Adasia Williams, anytime you have a 4-year guard in your backcourt, that's a huge advantage that you have right off the bat. So I think that's going to be a huge asset for them. She's a senior now. I love Shelby Hickey, the way she plays. She's a fun player to watch. She's scrappy. I think now in her senior year now, 3 years with Coach Minetti.
A member of the all-tournament team last year, Shelby Hickey.
Yeah, I really think that maybe this year is the year to take it to the next level.
All right. We're almost there, 75% of the way through, if my math is correct, right? I think that's something like that. Well, anyway, we'll move on. St. Francis U out in Loretto. Jess Kovach led all NCAA Division I freshmen in scoring last year. Coach Haig is thrilled to have her back in the rotation. Who's your prime performer? Can't pick Kovach.
I'm stunned with the way that St. Francis plays their offense. We know the tempo, lots of shooting, lots of scoring up and down the court on both ends. Everybody knows Kovach. I'm really surprised not that many people know Katie Reese, because she's in the backcourt as well. She averages about 10 points a game last year, and she's really running the show. She's getting all the teammates involved, and she's doing her own part, in terms of the scoring and on the defensive end. I think that maybe by the end of this year, maybe more people will know her name as one of the most dynamic, along with Kovach, backcourts in the entire Northeast Conference.
And I'll give you another one, Craig. Maya WYNN. She's seen time since her freshman year. Now she's a veteran. She can shoot it. She can score it. Maya WYNN for the Red Flash. I think she fits well into Joe Haig's system. From one St. Francis to the other, we go to Brooklyn. St. Francis Terriers. John Thurston has built quite a program in recent years. 2 years ago, they win the NEC championship. Last year, they win the national academic title, #1 GPA in the nation. Brilliant women over there in Brooklyn Heights. But tell me, who's going to ball out for Thurston's Terriers this fall?
Well, they have a lot to replace, because if you talk to Coach Thurston, I have over the years, he said the best all-around player he's ever coached is Leah Fetchko, and she's no longer there. So you got to replace not only what she does scoring, but all the intangibles, all the off-the-court stuff that you have to replace. And they're going to have to do it with a really young team, a lot of freshmen and sophomores that are coming in. But luckily, those sophomores got a lot of experience last season. So I think 1 year older, 1 year wiser is really going to help them. Alex Delaney is one of their upperclassmen leaders. I think she's going to maybe fill in some of that void both on and off the court. Maria Pallarino as well on the court. Young player, an up-and-coming player in the Northeast Conference, maybe poised to have a breakout year this year.
All right, so I think I have one left, and it's the Wagner Seahawks. You mentioned Heather Jacobs in her first year as head coach. Who's a player that she'll be able to lean on? Maybe someone she can begin to build around this season, a potential prime performer on Grimes Hill. What do you got?
Jackie DeLuey, senior, about 4 points, 4 rebounds. But there's going to be a lot more opportunities this year on both scoring and rebounding because of some of the losses that they've had. So I think if you're looking for a player whose numbers are going to rise the most, I think her numbers are going to be on the rise because there's so much more opportunity this year as Wagner looks to build that foundation.
All right, so we're moving along nicely here. Just went through Craig's list of potential prime performers. Time to slip into another topic here. NEC games that are circled on your calendar.
Well, Ralph, you don't have to wait that long because we start off the conference season with a bang. We ring in the new year with some big games that New Year's Eve weekend, I believe the 29th and the 31st, the first NEC weekend of the season. We start right where we left off in Fairfield with an NEC title game rematch with Robert Morris and Sacred Heart. And then for Sacred Heart, again, the preseason #1 team, their next game on New Year's Eve is against the Red Flash, which is another top 4 team in the NEC preseason poll. So they take on 2 title contenders within that first weekend. So that's a huge challenge for Coach Minetti. I think their non-conference schedule, last year, the Sacred Heart Pioneers, a team that once conference season got going, they didn't really get their identity as a team until after the conference season got going. There's no, hesitation this year. They jump right into it with 2 potential title game previews in that first weekend. So I think those are definitely some games to watch. Later on in the conference schedule, you're going to see Robert Morris and Bryant, which perhaps is the biggest rivalry going right now in the Northeast Conference. It's kind of a one-sided rivalry if you look at the postseason over the last couple years, but that's why it's so heated. Bryant trying to get over that Robert Morris hump. Those are always games, good games to watch. One of them is going to be a part of our ESPN3 package this year. So there's a lot of big games. Every game matters in the Northeast Conference, but those are some intriguing matchups that right now are circled on my calendar.
All right, Craig. Well, let's talk a little bit about the coaches of the Northeast Conference now. First, we'll start with which coach's style of play do you enjoy watching the most?
Well, as a fan, I love watching Coach Haig and his offense at St. Francis. You have a chance to see, if they're running efficiently, close to a 80, 90, 100-point game every time they take the floor. As a fan, it's fun to watch. As a player, my conditioning isn't what it was 10 years ago, so I don't know that I'd be able to keep up with them if I was actually on the court right now. But and I think what kind of goes under, you see the scoring, that's great, but they're just as fast and aggressive on the defensive end. And I think that's what separates them from just, a fun team that scores that much, that maybe is 5th, 6th, middle of the pack in the conference, to a team that maybe can contend and win a championship. And I think their improvements on the defensive end in that system is what now takes them to the next level here in 2017.
I would say Coach Haig's offense is probably one where there are enough shots to go around for everybody, especially when you're possessing the ball 80, 90 times per game. Which is the ideal number he likes to get to. So that's the on-court. You're a Joe Haig fan as far as style goes. Let me ask you the important question now. We'll switch it over to social media. Who's your favorite coach to follow on Twitter? There's nobody better right now than Coach Minetti of Sacred Heart. She's one of the most socially active head coaches, not just in women's NEC basketball, but all the NEC. She's always on there promoting the program, all the fun things that Sacred Heart does off the court, all the tremendous achievements that they have on the court as well, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, whether it's any social media platform. She's always out there, which is not easy to do because I hear when you're a head coach, you have a lot of responsibility. So sometimes sending a tweet is not the most number one priority, but she does a fantastic job with Sacred Heart, and they were at a haunted house a couple weeks ago for Halloween. She wasn't there because she's not a haunted house person, but the team was, and they've accomplished so much, and again, they're one of the top teams in the NEC this year. Well, she is definitely a fun follow on Twitter. She's engaging. She gives you that kind of inside access into the program, and she's real. But I'm going to tell you, Craig, Stephanie Oliver of LIU Brooklyn may not be too happy with your selection here, because I know she's pretty active on Twitter as well. And is there a place that she hasn't been? Every time I'm looking, she's at a concert or some kind of game, or courtside seats, or down on the field for the Giants, or what a life that Stephanie Oliver leads. Well, she'd be number 2. You're no doubt about it. She's active as well on social media. All right. We're talking coaches, which is always fun. But now, to wrap up the show, let's look forward some more. I want your top 3 contenders for the NEC title, and then your NEC Player of the Year selection.
Well, if for those who've been watching the show to this point, I don't think it's any surprise who the top 3 contenders are in the Northeast Conference. I'm going to be right there, kind of with the coaches as far as their preseason picks went. Robert Morris, the reigning champs. We talked about all the weapons that they have remaining. Their system is a lot is going to stay the same under Coach B. So Robert Morris, obviously a top contender to try to win their 3rd title in 4 years. You have Sacred Heart, the team that won the regular season last year in the Northeast Conference, maybe a year ahead of schedule, getting to that championship game. No doubt they'll be ready to go if they can get back in that position again this season. And then you look at St. Francis, again, another year that they have improved on the defensive end, still running that same show offensively that's been so efficient. I think those really are your top 3 teams. And again, St. Francis, they're always in title contention in the Northeast Conference, one of the most accomplished programs in the NEC. So those would be my top 3 teams in the NEC this season.
And you mentioned it in your top storylines in the beginning of the show, how you're wondering about this possible surprise team. Which team picked lower in the preseason rankings may finish in that top 4. So before you give me the player of the year pick, you told me about the top 3 contenders. We'll take a stab at your surprise team.
I'm going to give you 2 of them. First,
come on, Craig.
First, I think LIU Brooklyn, second year under Coach Oliver. They have a veteran core remaining. We talked about Dove, but also Jones, Ferris, Sanders, Waith. They have a really veteran team that's back this season. They finished 7th in the conference a year ago. They were picked 5th in the preseason. I think this is a team that maybe can contend for a top 4 spot, which they haven't been since 2010. So I think LIU Brooklyn, just because of the veteran core that they have remaining, second year under Coach Oliver, they could be one of those teams that take the next step. The second team, and I mentioned it earlier, it is an odd year, Central Connecticut State, and yes, they lost so much, but the last time that Coach Burl Piper, and she does this maybe better than anybody in the NEC, taking a group of players that aren't real publicized, not all conference players, maybe we haven't heard about, and gets them together playing team basketball and having success with them, overcoming some preseason predictions where maybe they weren't thought of as high. She does this every other year, and this is an odd year, taking this group of young players that maybe we don't really know about that much right now. We might know about them by the end of the season. I think Central Connecticut State is a team to watch.
All right, so the Blue Devils, and then of course the Blackbirds, which I think you were just trying to get back on to Coach Oliver's good side after you ranked her number 2 in the Twitter race. So we have the teams. Now, who's the player? Who takes home that top individual honor when we have our postseason awards announcement in March?
I've been talking myself in and out of this, on the car ride here, Ralph, over the last couple days, because you really have 3 contenders. You look at Hannah Kimmel, reigning player of the year in the Northeast Conference. Sacred Heart's going to be a good team again, and she's going to be a big part of it. If she, obviously, this is pending if everyone can stay healthy, obviously. She's going to be there, but we don't really see a lot of times coaches voting back-to-back players of the year. Anna-Nikki Stamalampru, again, good player on one of the best teams, but the system is not going to allow her to score, 25 points a game, but she does it all around. And that's player of the year. That's one of the things that she hasn't done yet in the Northeast Conference. There's not much, but player of the year is something she hasn't done yet. And obviously, you look at Kovac and what they're doing in St. Francis. She's going to have the opportunity to score a lot of points, but did the coaches vote a sophomore over 2 senior players as player of the year? So again, I'm talking myself in and out of those 3 players. If I had to pick right now today, I'm going to go with Anna-Nikki Stamalampru as my player of the year. But again, you can make a case for any of the 3.
Well, all right, Craig, the months ahead will provide us with all the answers. So we're glad to have you back for another season of NEC women's basketball. We'll check in with you as the season progresses. Maybe take a look at some of these predictions and how they're doing in January.
I think you just want to make fun of me out of all the ones I get wrong.
And there'll probably be plenty of those.
There's always surprises in NEC women's basketball. That's why they play the games.
Absolutely, and we have plenty of games to play. 2016-17 season tips off this Friday. I'm Ralph Ventre. He's Craig D'Amico. Keep it here all season long for your NECWBB coverage. Thank you for watching NEC Front Row.